I'll be joined by former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel in her first interview since stepping down as party chair. In full disclosure to our viewers, this interview was scheduled weeks before it was announced that McDaniel would become a paid NBC News contributor. This will be a news interview, and I was not involved in her hiring. This week, we learned just how much Trump's grip on the Republican Party is impacting the GOP's bottom line. The Biden campaign reported it has more than double the cash on hand of the Trump campaign, while the president himself has sharpened his attacks against his predecessor over his mounting legal debts. As those legal bills are growing, Trump has a new joint fundraising effort with the Republican National Committee that will filter donations to both his campaign and the super PAC paying his legal fees before the RNC even gets a cut. With Trump installing two handpicked loyalists to run the RNC, Michael Whatley and his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump, the party is now fully formed in Trump's image.
We are going to determine the fate of not only the United States, but of the entire world. And this body, the RNC, is going to be the vanguard of a movement that will work tirelessly every single day to elect our nominee, Donald J. Trump.
We are going to make sure that every single penny of every dollar raised goes towards one goal, which is winning.
Joining me now is former RNC chair Ronna McDaniel. Ronna, welcome back to Meet the Press. Thank you for being here.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Let's dive right into this and start with your decision to step down as RNC chair. If you can, take me behind the scenes a little bit. Were you pushed out of your role?
Well, there's no question that as RNC chair, you have to remain neutral. And we had a primary process. And so we did have debates, right? We had debates. And there was tension and a little friction that started during that process. It was well played out in the media. And I knew at that point when I was doing that role and we were going to have debates that when the nominee came forward and it was likely to be President Trump, that they would want to switch. And that's his right as nominee.
And so were you pushed out by him?
He absolutely wanted me to move aside and wanted Michael Whatley and Laura Trump to come in.
And you say you were neutral. You did put out that statement before he was officially the presumptive nominee, effectively calling on Nikki Haley to step out of the race. Can you say you were really neutral?
I can. I mean, we had a neutral primary. We had debates. I mean, look at the Democrats. They didn't have debates. Now they have RFK Jr. running as a third party. Imagine how the world would be different if they'd have allowed those debates to take place. I think that's so important to our public discourse. So yes, I was neutral. But as I said at that time, there was no math and no path, and that was true. And so we did need to consolidate behind the nominee, and that's what I did.
You talk about the tensions around the debates. Was there a breaking point with former President Donald Trump and you?
It was a lot of tension with the campaign. He really did not feel like we should have debates. He said this publicly. I got a lot of phone calls. And there
from
were
him,
people,
phone calls from Trump directly.
From everybody in his campaign, and I did talk to him. And also, you saw it from Trump supporters, right? Don't support the RNC, don't give to the RNC, don't have debates. Listen, there are a lot of people who support President Trump in our party, but there are others who didn't, and they needed to see that process to play out, to say, this was fair, my candidate was given an opportunity to speak to the American people, the voters decided, and this is the nominee. And because we let that process play out, he's the nominee without a third party running against him, which is the opposite of what the Democrats did.
You were replaced by Donald Trump's handpicked allies, including his daughter-in-law, Laura Trump. There's now this fundraising agreement, which basically means that donations go to the super PAC to pay for his legal bills before they go to the RNC. Is it appropriate for Donald Trump to ask donors to pay for his legal bills?
Well, I think as long as the donors know that that's what they're doing. And so it is in the waterfall of it. It's the Save America before the RNC. What I also think that means is that the campaigns or the RNC is being truthful when they're saying they're not going to pay the legal bills, that it is going to continue to run through the Save America PAC.
But ultimately, these donations are going first to pay his legal bills. People who may be struggling in some cases to make ends meet. Is there not an ethical challenge with that?
If they feel strongly to support his legal bills, then they have every right to do so. And I think he's being very open that they're helping with his legal bills.
And you, of course, paid $2 million for his legal bills while he was still in office. Do you have any regrets about that? Do you think that was an appropriate use of RNC funds?
You know, as a former president, as somebody who raised a lot of money into the RNC, we paid less than $2 million in legal bills, and we didn't, once he became a nominee or a candidate, we cut that off. It's different when you're a former president than when you're a candidate.
One RNC member told Politico that you were a, quote, failed chair. Another said, quote, we lost the House, the Senate, and the White House while she was chair. Did you deserve to stay on with that track record, Ronna?
You know, I push back on that very hard. You know, the fact that under my time as chair, we've had more women in Congress ever than in the history of our party, that we've had more minority growth in our party, and that didn't just happen. I had offices open in Black, Asian, Hispanic communities that we had ignored as a party, and we've seen growth as a result, which, by the way, we're seeing in this election as well. And then I'm going to point out to this. The RNC, we don't do the messaging. We don't pick the candidates. We're turnout. So if you look at 2022, just 2022, we turned out 4 million more Republicans, and we would have won the Electoral College based on that turnout. So what I say to people is, if we're building the road that all the candidates drive on, and if one candidate got to the finish line, the road wasn't the problem. It's candidate to candidate. And I can go to every race in 2022. So I view my tenure as RNC chair as a success.
All right. Well, let's talk about the election now. Donald Trump says one of his first acts, if he is reelected to a second term, would be, quote, to free those charged and convicted of crimes related to January 6th. Do you support that?
I want to be very clear. The violence that happened on January 6th is unacceptable. It doesn't represent our country. It certainly does not represent my party. We should not be attacking the Capitol. We should not be having violence. I said it that day. I put a statement out that day that this is not acceptable. If you attacked our Capitol and you've been convicted, then that should stay.
So then, but to the question, though, do you disagree with Trump saying he's going to free those who've been charged and convicted?
I do not think people who committed violent acts on January 6th should be freed.
So you disagree with that? He's been saying that for months. Ronna, why not speak out earlier? Why just speak out about that now?
When you're the RNC chair, you kind of take one for the whole team, right? Now I get to be a little bit more myself, right? This is what I believe. I don't think violence should be in our political discourse, Republican or Democrat. And I disagree with that. I agree with him on a whole host of other things. Let's close the border. Let's make sure we have good incomes for people. Let's make sure we do a lot of great things. But on that point, I don't think we should be freeing people who violently attacked Capitol Hill police officers and attack the Capitol.
Ronna, that is such a fundamental point. People would argue such a fundamental point to our democracy. You say you still support him. I assume you're still going to vote for him based on that. What do you say to those who hear your answers to that question and feel like it's hypocritical to then vote for him?
I think we have to make a choice, right? And everybody's looking at their candidates and they may say, I don't love everything about this. I disagree with this. I don't like how they say this. But for me, when I look at my state of Michigan and I look at the cost of food, the cost of rent, the cost of insurance, that I feel less safe. So, crime is on the rise, that we're seeing fentanyl come across our border, that we're seeing an open border. I don't think there's any choice but to vote for the Republican. Even though you may have disagreements, it's him or Biden, and that's the choice.
Just to be clear, though, studies show that crime actually is going down in major cities, and the fentanyl that is getting into the country is coming across legal ports of entry. But let me turn to this next question. Mitch McConnell said that Donald Trump was practically and morally responsible for the attack on the Capitol. Do you agree with him?
You know, I don't think he wanted that attack to happen on the Capitol, but I will say that attack is a dark day in our history. There's nothing to be proud of about that day. There's nothing that we can look back and say this was good. It's changed our whole country. And so I condemn what happened on January 6th. Do I think he wanted that to happen or pushed that to happen? I don't.
Well, now he seems to be very proud about it. He calls it a beautiful day. Again, he's talking about freeing those who've been convicted. If you ask some of those who were convicted, they say they were there because Trump asked them to be there. Does he not bear
I want to be really clear
for that day?
First of all, the RNC was not there. on January 6th.
But what about Trump? I want to ask you about Trump, because Mitch McConnell says Donald Trump was practically and morally responsible for the attack on the Capitol. Was he?
I've said I don't think he wanted the attack on the Capitol.
Was he responsible, though? He may not have foreseen it, but was he responsible?
Well, when I
for
say
it?
that, I don't mean he wanted that to happen, so I don't hold him responsible for that. But I do think that it was a terrible day, and it's not something to be celebrated, and it wasn't a beautiful day. The RNC was not there. We did not coordinate. We were not part of planning that day. But I also take it a different way, Kristen. When my kids see this on the internet and they see all these flags and it looks like the Republican Party's part of this, it changes them. They say, Mom, what is going on? Why is this happening? It's frightening. This is a dark day in our history, and we can never back away from the fact that we should all be condemning the events of January 6th.
I want to turn now to your actions in the aftermath of the 2020 election.
Sure.
On November 17th, you and Donald Trump were recorded pushing two Republican Michigan officials, election officials, not to certify the results of the election. And on the call, you're recorded as saying, quote, "If you can go home tonight, do not sign it. We will get you attorneys." Do you have regrets about that phone call and your actions?
I'm so glad
day?
you asked me about this, because I've never had a chance to respond to this. And if you know the course of what happened that night, these two individuals went into a hearing. They voted no. They didn't vote not to certify. They said, we want an audit. There were some problems in Wayne County. They've been consistent. They've been well documented over subsequent elections. And they said, as canvassers, we think we should have an audit before we certify. That's all they asked for. Once the public hearing opened, they were called such vicious names, such vile names. Family members were being threatened, that they changed their vote and they left shaken. And I did call them and say, nobody, and I think we should agree on this as Republicans and Democrats, nobody should be threatened or bullied or pushed to change a vote. And that's what happened to them. And I want to finish by saying our call that night was to say, are you okay? That's my recollection. It was 3.5 years ago. These are people I knew. I live in Wayne County. Are you okay? Are you all right? Vote your conscience, not pushing them to do anything. And then let me add one other thing. She was threatened to such a degree, Monica, that somebody's gone to jail. Yeah. I'm not going to say the threats that she had, but we can't, as parties, say we shouldn't be attacking election workers. Election workers need to be safe. And then when it happens to Republicans, ignore it. Well, and only report it when it happens to Democrats. Someone went to jail for these attacks.
I understand what you're saying about the concerns about her safety, but you got on the phone with her, with the then president of the United States. How can anyone see that as anything other than
to change your vote?
But you said do not sign it. If you can go home tonight, do not sign it. How can people read that as anything other than a pressure campaign?
No, the pressure was being put on them from the hours and hours of threats and abuse they were receiving that coerced them to change their vote. And they shouldn't have had to deal with that.
But if they're on the phone with you and Donald Trump, who was then the president of the United States,
I was not telling them to do anything. What I'm saying is I support you voting your conscience. We should all say that.
Knowing what you know now, do you regret making that phone call, Ronna?
I regret the fact that people are being threatened for doing their job in this country. I think it's wrong to say, I want a simple audit, and to have your family be threatened, your daughter be threatened, your livelihood be threatened, being called racist. Go look at the transcripts. And this is the one thing. We can't have one standard for Democrat election workers and not Republican.
But Ronna, ultimately, there were 250 audits. They never found there was any corruption. Did you not have a responsibility as the RNC chair to say before January 6th, the election is not rigged, that Donald Trump lost, given that there were audits, given that there were more than 60 court cases that occurred all across the country? And that Donald Trump lost?
The reality is Joe Biden won. He's the president. He's the legitimate president. I have always said, and I continue to say, there were issues in 2020. I believe that both can be true. You can say massive laws were changed. They were changed through courts or through secretaries of state and not through the legislative process in the name of the pandemic. That took away safeguards to the election.
But you acknowledge those, what you're talking about, did not rise to the level in any way of overturning any of the state's election results.
Remember, Kristen, in November, which, by the way, is when that call took place, in November. The election happens in November. We're getting so much incoming. We have a job to say this was done correctly.
Yeah.
And I'll just finish about Wayne County.
Yeah.
You know, there were precincts that didn't align. That's a fact. That's not propaganda. That's a fact. So why can't you say, hey, listen, these precincts aren't aligning. Let's take a look under the hood.
Let me just stop you, because you just said Joe Biden's a legitimately elected president. This is the first time you have said this.
It's not. I have said it many times.
Well, this is what you said a year ago to Chris Wallace. I want to play you what you said.
Are you saying, as the chair of the Republican Party, that you still have questions as to whether or not Joe Biden was the duly elected president?
Joe Biden's the president.
No, I didn't ask you whether he's the president.
No, I don't think that. I think
Do you
there were
think
lots of problems.
he won the election?
I think there were lots of problems with 2020.
Do you think he
won the election?
Pardon?
But ultimately, he won the election, but there were lots of problems with the 2020 election. 100%.
And that's fair.
But I don't think he won it fair. I don't. I'm not going to say that.
So you didn't say he won it fair at that point. Can you say, as you sit here today, did Joe Biden win the election fair and square?
He won. He's the legitimate
Did he win
president.
Fair and square?
Fair and square, he won. It's certified. It's done. But I
Ronna,
do think, Kristen, let me just say something.
To say that. Why
because
has it taken you until now to be able to say that?
I'm going to push back a little, because I do think it's fair to say there were problems in 2020. And to say that does not mean he's not the legitimate president.
But Ronna, when you say that, it suggests that there was something wrong with the election. And you know that the election was the most heavily scrutinized. Chris Krebs said it was the most secure election in modern history. When you say there were problems, it suggests still that you're giving credence to these allegations of fraud.
You have states like Pennsylvania go from 260,000 mail ballots in 2016 to 2.6 million, saying, you know what, when you get rid of ID for all mail-in ballots, that's a concern. We should all be concerned about the care, custody, integrity of every ballot. But that's all I'm saying. And you know what? This is a viewpoint of a lot of Republicans, and they think Joe Biden's the president, but they also think there were problems, and both can be true.
But even the Supreme Court, Ronna, didn't take up concerns about the election results in Pennsylvania and a slew of other states. Let me just stick to, though, I want to allow you to continue to answer questions about your role in the 2020 election. Beyond the call that we were just discussing, the RNC helped the Trump campaign assemble fake electors in Michigan, provide a platform for Trump lawyers to hold that news conference with Rudy Giuliani alleging a global conspiracy to rig the election against Trump. And you yourself called the election rigged multiple times. Did you enable Donald Trump to spread election lies?
Let's go back to time.
But
initially in November of 2020, there were concerns everywhere. Imagine you saw videos being put out, all types of things. You have to track that down. So where I was in 2020 and the quotes that are being taken from a very long time ago, 3.5 years ago, to where I am today, you've got to allow the process to play out. And I think it is fair to say there were concerns then, but no, Biden is the president, and we need to move forward. And this is important for our country.
Ronna, I think what people struggle with is by the time January 6th happened, all of those court cases, more than 60 court cases, had already been litigated. Donald Trump had lost. The Supreme Court said they're not going to take up concerns. As the head of the RNC, did you not have a responsibility to say Joe Biden won?
I've said that.
At the time, before January 6th, and you're still saying that there were concerns this morning.
Saying there's concerns about the election doesn't mean he didn't win. And that's the only thing I'm going to say. Listen, we are in 78 lawsuits right now at the RNC. I'll give you one example. One's in Montana right now with Democrats suing to say you should be allowed to be registered to vote in 2 states. Why are they suing on that? Why are you suing to allow voter ID to be removed in states? I disagree with that.
Ronna, do you, to the people who feel like you enabled Donald Trump and his lies about the election, do you owe people an apology? Do you owe this country an apology?
I think the fact that we looked at things is what Democrats have done, Republicans have done. We're allowed to look after elections and say, I want to make sure this was done in a transparent and fair way. And I certainly do not agree with violence or any attacks on our Capitol. And I'm going to be very clear, that is something I condemn wholeheartedly.
Very quickly, Ronna, before I let you go, you seem to be changing your tone as it relates to Joe Biden being legitimately elected. Why should people trust you believe what you're saying right now?
I don't think I'm changing my tone at all.
But why should people trust what you're saying right now?
One, I will say this. Kristen, voters right now in this country are going to be making a choice in November. and they don't care about 2020. Republicans
a lot
and
of people
Democrats
do. A lot of people see it as fundamental to the country's democracy.
I think they're thinking about inflation, the border, crime, their kids' schooling, and I think it's really important. I represent 50% of this country, whether you like it or not, to be able to have different viewpoints and say, I disagree with that viewpoint, but it's important to hear it, is important to our country. I am not changing my tune. This is where I have been. And right now we're heading into a pivotal election.
Speak to the people who hold you responsible for enabling Donald Trump and his mistruths, his lies about the election. Why should they trust you when they say they don't?
I think you should trust me. I mean, I can't speak to people who don't trust different voices. I think you should be able to hear from different voices. And I haven't been able to talk to you about the concerns I had going into that election. And I wish there was more of a dialogue from that. But let me be very clear. I love this country. I come from a state that's been overlooked. I don't see my state represented in a lot of news media. I don't go home as Chairman Ronna McDaniel. I'm Mom Ronna McDaniel. I go to the grocery store. I do all these things. And I really feel like if our country is going to survive, we need to be able to have difficult conversations like this in a respectful way. We need more of that in our country. But we also can't go into our echo chambers and say, I'm only going to listen to what Democrats have to say, and I'm only going to listen to Republicans have to say. Listen to it and make your own opinion.
All right. Ronna McDaniel, thank you very much
for having
being
me
here this morning.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.